Over a year ago, I made a video about the New York City subway's A-Division rolling stock. I made some predictions about how the rolling stock could change because of two main factors, which I will explain later. But today, it's time to talk about the B-Division, as well as the Staten Island Railway. For those who didn't watch my video about the A-Division rolling stock, I talked about two main factors that could cause changes to the car assignments. If you didn't watch that video, I suggest you check it out, but it will explain the two main factors just to get any new viewers up to speed. The first factor is the age of the existing fleet. This is pretty self-explanatory. As train cars get older, they would have to be replaced. And the second factor is compatibility with the fleet. Certain train cars can only run on certain lines, and also some lines may use advanced signaling, which is called CBTC here. If a line is equipped with CBTC, it needs modern train cars to work. Anyway, onto the predictions. We'll go trunk line by trunk line, but first, the Staten Island Railway. Now, it isn't part of the B division, but it is still under the MTA. The Staten Island Railway currently rocks R44 cars. These were manufactured by the St. Louis Car Company in the early 1970s. These were also used on some lines of the B division over a decade ago. Now, what's going to happen with these cars? It should be obvious. They will be replaced by the R211S cars, which is one of the three different types of R211s. The 44s are literally half a century old, and it should be time to put them to rest. For a long time, we knew almost nothing about the R211S cars. The first pilot train was supposed to be delivered in December 2021, then got pushed to August 2022. And then 10 months after that, in May 2023, the first R211S pilot train finally arrived. And of course, we can thank the COVID-19 pandemic for those delays. Thankfully, they should be able to start the 30-day acceptance test by fall this year. Interestingly enough, the R211S cars will come in 5 car sets, since each car is expected to be 60 feet long, compared to the R44s, which are 75 feet long and come in 4 car sets. I always like the 60-foot trains more, since that means there are more doors for a faster passenger flow. Years ago, many wondered what the R211S cars would look like, and just as I expected, they look 100% identical to the R211A cars. I mean, there's really no point to make the car different just because it's running on Staten Island. But I will say I am very much interested in how the automated announcements would sound like. Alright, now on to stuff that people actually care about. The actual NYC B division. Let's start with the 8th Avenue line. The E line uses R160 cars, manufactured by Alstom and Kawasaki in 2005. And the A and C both use the R46. The 46s were built by Pullman Standard in the mid-1970s. The A and C also use another car, the R179, manufactured by the infamous and defunct Bombardier Transportation in the mid-2010s. Now here is where things get a little confusing. Obviously, the only car here that will have to skedaddle will be the R46 because of its age. But we currently have the rollout of CBTC on Queens Boulevard, 8th Avenue, and planned Fulton Street line, which the A, C, and E run on. Now, if you remember in my A division predictions video, I mentioned how I noticed that MTA sort of likes to pair similar rolling stocks together when they have CBTC. For example, Queens Boulevard, the E, F, M, and R lines all run on it, and they all use R160 cars with CBTC. Not to mention that the E, F, and R are all assigned to Jamaica Yard and using the R160s from there as well. Now, I can't really provide an answer to why the MTA groups similar cars. I could guess that maybe the R160 is the only one that can run there with CBTC, but I don't think this is the case since CBTC was installed there with interoperability in mind. So if we assume that all NTTs can work with the CBTC that's being installed right now, then I don't expect to see any car changes to the E line. If this applies to the A and C line, after the 46 retires, they can use the R179 alongside R211s, since it's a no-brainer that the R211 is coming to Pitkin Yard for the A and C anyway. Now we do have to mention this rumor that's going around. The C line may switch to using 10-car NTT trains rather than 8. And if this is true, all of the 8-car R179s that are on the C will have to be displaced to other lines. The C can easily use the same R179 and R211 cars from Pitkin, which will allow for 10-car trains. Now, one thing I didn't mention is whether the R211 will also include 8-car units. And from the looks of it, the R211's 8-car units will most likely arrive in the second option order, which is pretty far in the future. Sadly, we can't wait for those to arrive since CBTC on 8th Avenue will probably finish a year or two prior to that. If the rumor that the C train using longer trains is false, then it's going to have to wait for the 8-car R211s because there are no more 8-car new techs that the C train can utilize. It can't take any 8-car new techs from, let's say, East New York Yard because those are being used by other lines. So what's going on here? Since the simplest thing is to just retire the R46 and let the C use long RN79s and R211s, I think this should just happen. And obviously, this also means that I hope that the rumor of the C using longer trains is true. But seriously, this is the simplest change. And those 8-car RN79s could be displaced to other lines like the J for extra service there. Now, if you assume that this is not possible, there should be no issue with the C train using 8-car RN79s along with 10-car R211s. Sure, this seems very strange since they are different lengths, but you have to remember it literally uses 8-car R46s alongside 8-car RN79s. And 8-car R46s are about as long as, let's say, 10 RN79s. So in my opinion, there isn't much big of an issue with inconsistencies with the lengths of the entire train units. Now 6th Avenue. Here is where the B, D, F, and M service run. The B and D use R68 cars built by Westinghouse Amrail in the mid-1980s. The B also uses R68A cars that were built by Kawasaki a couple of years after the originals. And then the F and M line both use R160 cars. The F uses 10-car R160s and the M uses 8. Now let's get the M train out of the way first. The M is pretty much locked to using its R160s. The M needs new techs to operate CBTC on Queens Boulevard, but also the Myrtle Avenue and Broadway lines in Brooklyn don't have long platforms. They're only long enough to support 8-car NTTs. The only other 8-car new techs that we have right now are the R179s and R143s. Sure, they're hosted at East New York Yard, which the M uses, but we already know the MTA doesn't want those running on the M. So the M is keeping its R160s, there's no reason to change anything there. Now for the B and D trains. You might all be quick to say that the B and D aren't getting their cars changed, but CBTC is coming to the 6th Avenue line after the MTA recently changed their CBTC plans in July 2022. If you look at all the NTTs that exist right now, you can do some process of elimination. The R143 and R179 just can't work for obvious reasons. The R160 is debatable, and there are a couple of rumors saying that R160s are coming to the B and D in the future. But I find this asinine. Even if R160s end up on them, they'll of course be taken from Jamaica, and that means Jamaica will need R211s or some other new tech to compensate for that change. And to be honest, this is just way too complex. I think R211 cars should just go straight to the B and D. Once again, the reason why I think so is just simplicity. The B and D currently are assigned to different yards, with the D being assigned to Concourse and the B to Coney Island. Sure, you can put R211s at Coney Island Yard exclusively for B train service, but I think this will be a good idea to assign the B train to Concourse Yard, letting the B and D rock the same R211s. This would make everything nice, simple, and convenient. Now, where will the R68 and R68A cars go after this? The MTA expects these trains to stay in service until at least 2025 to 2030. Should the cars not be ready for retirement when the R211s start to run on them, then no problem. I think the R68 and R68As could just go to other lines, like the N and Q. Since the R46s are likely to be retired at this time, the N and Q will need new cars, and I think it will be great for R68s and R68As to go to them. As far as the F goes, it should just keep its R160s for the same reasoning that I gave for the E train. Now, of course, maybe R211s can make it to the F line in the future for fleet expansion and to take advantage of CBTC being installed, but for now, I think it's going to be all R160s. Also, the main goal here is to just retire all the old units anyway. So if R211s do make it on the F, I think it's going to happen a little more far into the future. Now the Crosstown Line. Here's where the lonely G train runs all by itself. The G used to use 4-car R46 and R68 cars from Coney Island Yard, but over a year ago, the G switched back to Jamaica Yard. And the reason why I say back is that it used to be assigned to Jamaica in the past. So now, the G uses 5-car R160s. CBTC is coming to the Crosstown Line from Court Square to Hoyt Schermerhorn, and will also go to the Culver Line from Bergen Street to Church Avenue in the future. Because of this, it's clear that SME cars will never touch the G line ever again. Now, I do have to mention a third rumor. The G might switch to using longer trains. Honestly, I don't know why this didn't happen before, but here it is, I guess. Now, will the G switch to using 8-car NTTs or full 10-car? The G could hypothetically use 10-car RM60s for all of its trains via Jamaica Yard, but I have no idea whether Jamaica has enough RM60s to make this possible. Because the entirety of the G line will be automated, the MTA would want to run more trains to take full advantage of the CBTC. Since I already predicted the R211 cars coming to Jamaica, we could see R211s and R160s both running on the G. Now, will these be short or long R160s and R211s? If the G uses 5-car units, the MTA could have increased frequency on the line with half the amount of trains. This is because, let's say, a 10-car R160 could just be used as 2 5-car units. Now, if the MTA is greedy, which they pretty much are, then they would use the short 5-car units for the G, allowing it to have more trains while also lowering the actual amounts of consist that need to be used. Of course, with the CBTC, they can run very frequent trains, but the short trains will result in more crowded cars, and the issue of people still missing trains because of it stopping in the middle of the platform will still be present. I see the MTA using 5-car R160s and R211s for the G, but I really think it should switch to using longer units. Nonetheless, I'm still very excited for the G line to actually have frequent service. Let's talk about Broadway now, where things should be pretty self-explanatory. The N, Q, R, and W lines all run along here. The R uses R160s, and the N, Q, and W all unfortunately use R46s, R68s, and R68As. Let's get the R out of the way first. It's keeping its R160s for obvious reasons. Also, the R doesn't have much connections to subway yards anyways, so it wouldn't be very smart to change the R's assignments. Now onto the rest of the Broadway lines. I did predict that the R211 will go to the B and D for CBTC on 6th Avenue, and since the B and D had those R68s and R68As, here's what I think is going to happen. I think after the R46 retires, the N, Q, and W will be given R68s and R68As to use. Of course, all the R68s will have to retire soon, but because they're younger than the R46 means that they could be milked for a little bit longer. As far as CBTC goes, it will be coming to the Broadway line and the N and W's Astoria line, but this won't happen for quite some time. The MTA just pushed back the CBTC projects for the Astoria line to their 2025 to 2029 program, so the N, Q, and W will be stuck with SMEs for a while. Since CBTC on 6th Avenue will either be near completion or completed by, let's say, 2025, that means R211 should already be on the B and D line, and the R46 should probably be fully retired. What about the R68s? When are they gonna retire? Maybe some R211s could be coming to the N, Q, and W, but when you take a closer look at the actual amount of R211s that will be ordered, we're going to need more units. There needs to be about 950 R211 cars to replace all the R46s. And when we count all the R68s and R68As, there needs to be about 800 R211s to retire those. We're getting less than 1,750 R211 cars, which is what you get if you add up those numbers that I just mentioned. So we're going to need more R211s, or we're gonna have to wait for a new train that's coming after the R211, and this mystery train will most likely be that R268 that was mentioned in a recent MTA document. Personally, I think we should just increase the R211 order and get more of them, because the process of choosing a manufacturer, testing pilot trains, and all that stuff is just gonna take too long. But for my final prediction, I think the N, Q, and W will use R211s alongside R268s. And of course, maybe the R line could get some R211s as well for service increases and fleet expansion. Since Broadway is getting CBTC last after all the other lines, the N, Q, and W lines may not be prioritized with getting new cars. But that's it. Thank you all so much for watching this video. If there are lines that I haven't mentioned, I just don't have predictions for them, and I think they should just stay the same. Let me know your thoughts on the car assignments below. Thank you all so much for watching again. I've been recording for over an hour, and until next time, peace out.